Hello kids, welcome to today's session. This is Sweta Roy, your English Master Teacher at Vedantu. And today, in the second session of Chief Seattle's speech, we are going to discuss on the most important topics that can come from this very chapter. This is a little complicated chapter. I have tried my best to analyze the most important portions from this chapter in our previous session. I hope you have understood the chapter very well after going through the session. If you haven't, then please do revisit that session and once more so that the memory is fresh about the analysis of the chapter, and then come to this session and let's talk about the most important question answers from this very session, from this very chapter. So, yes, this exam season, boost your scores by buying our micro course just at flat rupee 1. You have 2,000 topic-wise, more than 2,000 topic-wise courses for grade 6 to 12, CBSE, ICSE, JEE and NEET. So, do buy it right now. And yes, guys, with that, we are going to begin with our very important discussion on the very important as well as a little complicated chapter, but I would make all your complications, all your confusions absolutely easy and simple, right? So, introducing to you a live online quiz where you can score, earn and learn. Download the app right now. Also, we are going to come up with something amazing and exciting very soon. So stay subscribed to our channel to know more. So now let's do some workout, right? So the first question which we are going to discuss is transculturation, which has been represented in Chief Seattle's speech. Now, you would ask me, obviously, ma'am, what is transculturation? Very simple. Transculturation means when you are talking about two cultures or more than two cultures, that is cross-culture, right? So here, when Chief Seattle is discussing about, the cultures, he is discussing not only about the native culture, but also the culture of the, Euro-Americans, the whites, okay? So, he tended to emphasize throughout the speech, he is emphasizing the difference between the Native Americans and the Euro-Americans. And of course, the Euro-American idea that the Native Americans were soon going to become extinct. And this is what is surfacing throughout his speech. This idea of the inevitable extinction of the Native Americans as a race originated from where? Originated from the colonists. Who are the colonists? Who dominated the native land, who dictated the native land, controlled the native land, that is the Euro-Americans. Moving on, this idea served the colonists quite conveniently, definitely. So this was very convenient for the colonists to colonize the nation. It justified what Ring calls the transfer of real estate. Now, what is this transfer of real estate? The process in which European settlers gradually moved into established Indian communities as the Indian disappeared. So, gradually the Red Indians started disappearing, as Chief Seattle also mentioned in the speech that he gave, about the extinction gradually decreasing and almost on the verge of extinction of their race. Now, throughout the speech, Chief Seattle indicates his acceptance of the belief that Native Americans would definitely become extinct. Throughout the speech, when we read it, we find this idea reverberating. He refers to their untimely death and he laments, "It matters little where we pass the remnant of our days." So he does say in his speech that it does not matter where we spend the remaining part of our day, because almost there are anyways not many days are left with us. We are soon going to be extinct. in accepting the ultimate defeat of the Red Indians, Chief Seattle adopted an element of the dominant Euro-American thought. So he had also adopted and he had accepted that dominant thought which the colonizers had. And this is demonstrating the transculturation. So with that, we come to our next question, which asks, how does the speaker realize that he should not mourn the untimely death of his people? So at one point when he was mourning that now the ones, growing people who covered the entire land in multitudes and multiples now are gradually deteriorating and decreasing and fading away. But then he says that no, I should not mourn the untimely death of his people, because he believes that tribe follows tribe just as nation follows nation, like the waves of the sea, right? So just as the wave of the sea is followed by, like, one wave comes, it goes away, fades away, and then it is replaced by another wave. Similarly, the tribes will also be replaced by this tribe. When it is distant, when it is vanished, it would be replaced by some other tribe. The cycle of life continues. So this is a cycle, and this will continue because change is the law of nature. There is nothing permanent. Everything is temporary, everything is transient, and change is the law of nature. It is in order of nature, and therefore, so this is according to nature that change will come. Definitely one tribe will be extinct to give room to the other tribe or the next generation. So that is the law of nature. Therefore, I should not regret the fact. Next question is, why does Seattle say that there may be brothers after all? So this was a very sarcastic comment by Chief Seattle. A common fate would bond, although throughout the speech he constantly gives his arguments against the fact that they are brothers. They say that the whites are like the mornings, they are like the dewdrops which get, sorry, the natives are like the dewdrops which diminish or runs away as soon as the morning sun rises. So they cannot be brother. Day and night cannot be together. They are just opposites. So throughout the speech, he constantly, kind of validates these points. But there is one point where he says that maybe they are somewhere united, and who unites them? That is death, right? So death and decay, which they are facing now, maybe the Europeans, the Euro-Americans, they will face some time longer. They would stay for some longer time than the natives. But that doesn't mean that they have been exempted from the hands of death. Their God, who are like friends to them, they walk along with them, they talked with them like friends. Even they could not, even the God of the whites cannot exempt the whites from meeting their death. So death is a common, bond that creates, that unites these natives and the Euro-Americans. So that is how they say that they may be brothers, because they have this common father, death, uniting them, right? Then is, what is the condition laid by the speaker before he accepts the white man's proposition? Very important and very simple. He says that they should not be denied the privilege of visiting the tombs of their ancestors, friends and children, because they consider, it is in their tradition that they consider the tombs of their ancestors a very, holy place, a sacred ground. So whenever they want to visit, they should be allowed to visit. Next is, how is every part of soil is sacred to his people? So every part of soil is sacred to people because they have been inhabiting this earth. They were closely attached to this earth. Every plain, every grove, every hillside, they have been harrowed by some sad or happy event. So they are very much attached. to their land, they are intimately connected to their land. Even the rocks which are dead, which cannot speak, they are also connected with the memories and events of the life. The very dust upon which they stand, because they stand barefoot, they do not wear any slipper or something like that. So yes, they are very closely connected with the earth of that, the soil of that place, and that is rich with the blood of their ancestors. Their bare feet are the conscious, of the sympathetic touch. So the soil are very much conscious about the sympathetic barefooted touch of these natives. So that is how every part of the soil is sacred to his people. Therefore, they are too connected to their land, and therefore he speaks about preserving their land, even though he has to give in to the treaty of giving in their land. Next is how the author uses tone and style to reinforce his memories and make an impact upon the audience. Now, the speech was originally made in, as you know, Suquamish language, because he couldn't speak English, so it was done in his native language. And it was, delivered in 1850s to Isaac Stephen, who was the governor of Washington Territory. So, in his speech, he definitely emphasized on the preservation of the environment. So he shares his precious land memories by forming two different tones. He creates a passionate and sorrowful tone through diction and imagery. He made his speech passionate. When he was speaking, he was very much passionate, and that we can very well understand when we go through the speech and when we see all the arguments that he kept forth, right? So that he could move the audience's heart and hope that people would really take care of their land, right? Just as their chief, that is Chief Seattle, did. So the first part of his speech is packed with the memories and what the land means to the people. The tone of his words is definitely sorrowful because he focused on what he's going to lose and the things that he values and that the things that is precious to them, right? Every detail of the land, part of the land came from his memories, and that we can see his passionate, attachment to land, and he has a sorrowful tone of, parting away with his land. He uses detailed words, imagery such as shining, every humming insect, and every perfumed flower. Seattle used detailed words to describe something which had impacted him a lot. His imagery creates deeper meanings to his speech, and we can very well understand how much he's going to miss his native land. The second part of the speech is what Seattle wants the inherent of the land to do and not to do. So first part of the speech, he talks about his memories and the deep impact that the entire land has created in him, and he doesn't want to part away. He's sorrowful. And the second part tells what he wants the inherent of the land, those who are now going to inherit the land, what he wants them to do, how does he want them to take care of the land, because he loves his land, right? He tells them, he instructs them to love and to take care for the land because it is precious and it has given them the life force, right? The tone of his words is passionate over here in the second speech because land is very precious to him, and he wants the inherents of the land to, love as we have loved it, as they have loved it, and care for it as we have cared for it. Next is, why do the dead of the tribals never forget them or this beautiful world? So as we can see very well that the tribals, they are very much attached to the land, intimately connected with the land. So therefore, even after the death, they cannot forget the beautiful valleys, the rivers, magnificent mountains, sequestered vales, and verdant lined lakes and bays. and obviously they would yearn in fond affection over the lonely hearted living, and they would return even from the other world in order to guide and counsel the people, the natives, right? So they would, even though they would be dead, they would revisit the land without which they cannot survive, like without which, with which they are so much connected. Next is, how does Seattle predict the future of his tribe? Seattle predicts that his tribe might not survive long. So he knows that, he accepts the doom of his tribe. He knows that he has a bleak future, his tribe has a bleak future, and there is not a single star of hope. That is symbolized by the sad moaning winds which is there in the distance. And that speaks about their doom, their grim fate. He is sure of his people that they would definitely stolidly meet their doom whenever they hear the footsteps of their approaching destroyer. So they want, they can accept, they have already accepted that their doom is very near, right? So Chief Seattle has also accepted, and this is how he predicts the future of his tribe. They would be stolid, okay? They would, be accepted. They would be accepting their doom when they hear the approaching footsteps of their destroyers. Next comes, how does the speaker differentiate his tribal people from the white people? This is very, very, very important. Throughout this kind of summarizes the entire speech, okay? So if you handle this a question, then you could handle any other question that comes in your exam. So this is very important, kind of encapsulating the entire speech that we can, that we have read so far. So first of all, he says that red men, the red Indians, are fewer in number than the white men. The red Indians are compared with what? Like the scattered trees of a storm-swept plain. If you have gone through the previous lecture, you have seen that I have analyzed this portion also. The whites are large in number, like the grass that covers the vast prairies. So this is one difference, the difference in number. So please note down the points. First point you can note down as difference in number, okay? So that you could remember and you do not miss out any point. Second is, the natives' god is different from that of the colonizers' god. The god of the natives, so second point you could write as difference in god, okay? The god of the whites, they love him and they hate the natives. That is what Chief Seattle says. Seattle says that the white man's god protects them as, he protects them as a father who leads his infant son, but he has forsaken their red children. So how can the red and the white be brothers? Because their father, God, is not the same, right? He says that their God, the Great Spirit, also seems to have forsaken them. So even the natives' God have also forsaken them. The God of the whites are making them way stronger every day, but the natives are ebbing away like rapidly reversing tide that will never return, right? So this was the difference between their gods, okay? So very important. And third difference is the ashes and the graves of the ancestors. The ashes on the graves of the ancestors are sacred. So how do they pay homage to their ancestors and how they are connected to the ancestors? That can sum up your third point. So the ashes and graves of the ancestors are sacred for the natives, while the whites, they wander far away from the graves and they seem to be without regret. So they are far away. They are not very attached to their ancestors because they leave they leave their ancestral graves unattended. The view on death of the whites also differ from that of the natives. So death. Now, philosophy of death. That is also very different. How? The natives, even after the death of their loved ones, they would remember them and their experience in every place with them, either in the magnificent mountains or in the stones that are sacred to them. Even when a person dies, he is not remembered and he is forgotten by the whites. So the whites, they easily forget their dead, okay? Whereas the natives, they are very much attached to their land, and even while they leave this land, they come back and revisit, okay? And another point that I think I have missed over here is when I was talking about gods, you could also add the point that their religion is also different. How the whites, their religion, he speaks about the 10 commandments, as I mentioned in my previous lecture. The Christianity is, etched on stones, written on stones, so that they remember, okay? Whereas the religion of these native people, that is written in the hearts of them, right? So they do not have to be constantly reminded, just like the whites. They need to be constantly reminded because their religion is written on stones. Whereas the religion of the natives are written in the hearts of people. Seattle says that now, while the whites, they are more mechanical. So throughout the speech, Seattle also, he talks about preserving nature, right? So while the white people, they are more mechanical, artificial in their way of life, the tribal, they are more attached and concerned with nature, right? So the Chief Seattle believes that when the westernization, with the wave of westernization, it will, destroy the wave of westernization, industrialization, modernization would completely destroy the natural inhabitant of people. Nature would be exploited by the Westerns because of their artificial way of life, right? The tribal men, they are tribals, right? So they remain in close connect with nature, and their ancient way of life is of more value, right? So Seattle says that the natives are like orphans now, with no one to support them. Hence he says, how can we be brothers, right? So these are the 4 or 5 points of differences that you need to remember. This is actually encapsulating the entire speech, right? So very important. Next is, what happened when the tribal young man became angry? This is also a very important question. So Seattle says that the youth is impulsive and the young men of this race are also of no exception. When the young man grew angry, what they did? They became cruel. They painted their face black, which was representative of their blackness inside, right? So they became cruel, they became relentless. Then, when did the hostilities between the tribals and the white men begin? It started when the white men started to push the tribals out of their land and thereby occupying their land, right? So it was at that point the hostilities between the tribals and the whites started to begin. Next is, why did Seattle want to end up the hostilities? Very, very, very important. Seattle wanted the hostilities to end because no one would have gained anything. Because Seattle knew that their number was decreasing, okay? They were decreasing in number and they were already in a disadvantaged point, right? In terms of number, that he began his speech with this, right? So therefore, they would not gain anything out of the hostilities, right? They would obviously lose their lives. So he's mature enough to understand the futility of war, which leads to the wastage of so many young lives. Families lose their son. So therefore, he advocates peace, friendship, alliance. He doesn't glorify war. He condemns war. This is very important and it shows a mature perspective of Chief Seattle. Next is, when will the shores swarm with the invisible dead of the speaker and why? The shores will swarm with the invisible dead of the speaker's tribe when the white man's children, so this is from the end of the speech almost, think that they are alone in the field, the store, the shop, or upon the highway, or in the silence of the pathless woods, but they would not be alone. They would be harrowed by whom? The invisible dead. Because they think that no place is dedicated to solitude. So these dead, natives who are, attached to this land, they would come back, they would revisit, and they would keep harrowing the land, right? So the white children would never be left alone. They would be always accompanied by the spirits of the dead natives. At night, when the streets of the white man's cities and villages are silent and they think that they are deserted, the fact would be that the streets would throng with the returning spirits of the people that had once filled the land, and still love this beautiful land. So they are so attached that they can never go away permanently, right? Next is another very important question. What does the speaker say about death? So as I've already mentioned this previously, that for the speaker, death is inevitable. And the destinies of both the races, whether Indians or the white people, they are, going to meet their destinies, that is death. They all have to die one day. Maybe perhaps now the natives are decaying, but one day the tribes, like the whites, they would also, their doom is also certain, right? So they also have to meet their ultimate fate, that is death. So he feels that death unites them and they are like brothers. He says that in fact there is no death. Death is what? It's just a change of world. So that is also very philosophical. Okay. Now the next question and the last one is, how is the Chief Seattle speech philosophical? Very, very, very important. This is philosophical because of various reasons. First is, it is a powerful plea of the Native Americans' rights and environmental values respect. It criticizes the white people on their reckless development and imperialistic attitude, which affects the natural environment. And it also criticizes the recklessness of young men of his own tribe, urging them to be more responsible and more sensible. Seattle urges for the need to protect nature and warns against the fast progress of Western civilization. So the rapid progress of Western civilization would lead to the rapid destruction of natural environment. Seattle flavors his speech by comparing the never-changing stars of his, to his speech that would never change its stance in response to a land treaty with the natives from the government proposal. So he compares the never-changing, stance to the never-changing stars in the sky. So as the stars are constant, similarly his stance regarding the treaty is also constant. The speech addressed significant concerns and possibilities to agree to the land treaty. Seattle's speech highlights that the natives should be allowed access to their ancestors' resting ground. Okay, so finally, when he agreed to everything, he also put forward this condition that they should be allowed to visit their ancestors' resting grounds. His view about death at the end, which I just mentioned currently in the previous question, you need to add that as well when you talk about his being philosophical in the speech. So that was all from my end about Chief Seattle speech, most important question answers. I hope this worked for you, and please do, if you read all these questions, go through all these questions, I don't think you have to visit any other site or any other reference books you'll need. You just read the chapter very carefully and go through these questions. You will definitely score great marks in your exam. Just write down, frame your answers properly. Thank you guys. Thanks for watching. See you all again in the next session. Till then, keep sharing your love by hitting the like button and do subscribe for more updates.